meditation is the place where we can come to find that the door is only has ever been locked from the inside. And this is the place where we can actually learn how to unlock that door into openness. And what happens in that openness is we become much more, in a relationship to self-love, in a place of like this heart of being. And that's not, once we're in that place of self-love, things just begin to flow, and it's like so much easier to deal with all of the challenges and difficulties in life, and be present and accepting and real with sadness and suffering and loss and impermanence.
You're listening to A New Way of Living with Dan Voss, inspiring you to a new life of breathwork, cold therapy, and plant medicine. In this week's episode, my guest is Luke Wientzen. Luke has studied with many masters in a wide range of approaches and practices, from yoga to various approaches with breath techniques, energy medicine, and martial arts, and in-depth approaches in several schools of meditation. He believes in and uses an engaging take on wellness, integrating physical embodiment, breathwork, meditation, and a growth mindset into his personal and professional existences. Luke worked as a full-time public high school special education teacher for 18 school years and has taught public yoga, breath, and mindfulness classes and workshops for the past 13 years. He is a co-founder of Our Breath Collective, an online breath education, life performance enhancement platform. I'm excited to have Luke on the podcast because he passionately shares wisdom from his direct experiences in the interest of furthering the benefits of healing and awakening and community connection. He lives in Encinitas, California. Enjoy this conversation with Luke, but first, a word from our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Our Breath Collective. OBC explores the range of breathing through non-dogmatic principles, live experience, progressive education, and a global community. Simply put, OBC exists to share the power of breath to inspire the extraordinary. By using breathing as a tool, their students learn a quick and powerful way to unlock their true potential with the support of a global community for a complete life upgrade. I'd like to invite you to become a member of Our Breath Collective and begin building your intuitive breath toolkit through daily live guided breathing practices. Through 15 minutes a day, you can get the support you need in creating a consistent practice. Each session is recorded and saved in an on-demand library of over 250 practices, so you can always tap in when you need it most. This membership is something I participate in on a daily basis, and I'm so excited to share it with you because I can confidently say that this has changed my life. I can't imagine starting my day without breathwork and without the folks at OBC. Visit ourbreathcollective.com and use code DAN, D-A-N, at checkout for $10 off your first month. And now, enjoy the episode. Luke, thanks so much for joining me today, man.
Awesome, Dan. Yeah, thanks for having me. Stoked to be here.
Yeah, we've had the pleasure of getting to know each other over the last, I would say, year or so. Been introduced to Our Breath Collective, which you're a co-founder of, along with Reese. And Sam has been involved now, and it's just been so fun to see you guys grow alongside the same time that I'm getting into breathwork and meditation, and just my own path and my own journey of growth. And it's just been awesome to get to know you guys and learn from you and connect. So excited for today's conversation.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, likewise.
Awesome. So yeah, I mentioned that you're a co-founder of Our Breath Collective, and obviously a big part of your work is around breathing and meditation. So why don't you start off telling us a little bit more about how you got to where you are today? I always am fascinated hearing people's stories of where and how they were introduced to breathwork and meditation. I understand you have a yoga background, so can you kind of walk us through that timeline, if you will, of how you were introduced and how you got to where you are now?
Yeah, totally. Well, back way up. I grew up on the East Coast. Grew up in a Catholic family. Went to Catholic school from kindergarten through high school. Went to an all-boys Jesuit high school. in Washington, D.C. Had a lot of questions around all that as a kid, that were never answered in a lot of ways, except in silence. And by the time I went to college in Charleston, South Carolina. I went and lived in mainland Mexico for a year. After that, I'd started surfing in South Carolina. I lived in Puerto Escondido, which was the waves were amazing, for a year after college. And then I moved to California, and I became a high school special ed teacher, which I did for 19 years. And throughout that time, I, in addition to surfing, I got into yoga. Back, in like 2002, I think I started practicing yoga. And I really always loved the aspect of breathing. I found the breathing to be the one like consistent thing to really come back to, which really drew me into my body and worked with my mind in that postural asana practice. And so by 2007, I got really serious and committed to practicing yoga. And then in 2008, I did my first training. And in the context of that 200-hour training, I was like most interested in, studying pranayama and, classical breath practice, but more like how I would incorporate that into like the primary focus of what I want to share with people is breath practice. Now, in that for many years, that was just like along the lines of consistent, not necessarily even connected breathing, but kind of like an ujjayi breath pattern with a little bit of pranayama in the beginning and the end, but in the context of movement. So it wasn't alone, but I always loved to lead with, this is a breathing practice. Let your body follow your breath. In fact, that's cueing I still use, To back it up a little bit, in 2004, I had this experience with the first yoga teacher that I was studying with. Her name was Maral. She invited me to a Saturday night small group gathering at her studio, which was in Bird Rock in Pacific Beach, with a woman named Judith. And she said, we're going to do this breath thing with this woman. It's different than yoga breathing. And she said, it's pretty far out. I don't really know what we're going to get into, but I think it'll be cool. And it was like a potluck thing. And so I went, and this woman named Judith Kravitz and two kind of guardians or facilitator helpers that she brought came with her and took us through transformational breathwork experience. And I had such a profound experience that, it was that I felt like, whoa, this is so different than any yoga breathing I've ever encountered. And at that time, I was kind of like, it was completely separate from yoga, that kind of breath. And so by the time I started like getting really serious about studying yoga and studying pranayama, there wasn't a lot of overlap with this kind of connected breathwork, healing breathwork, really powerful somatic breathwork experience, like, kind of isolated from movement, right? And it definitely wasn't being incorporated into like yoga studios and overlapping with yoga communities and whatnot. So I did, in 2008, I did my first training. In 2009, 10, 11, I did more yoga trainings with different teachers, different styles, approaches. And I worked actually with a couple of teachers who kind of had some specialty in pranayama. But I always found that I was like more interested in something that was like engaging and active for people. And once I had this breathwork experience, I kind of knew like, whoa, that's like so different than what I'm equipped to do in a yoga room with bodies and movement, right? And it wasn't really like so widespread yet. It wasn't, Wim Hof wasn't on the scene yet. It wasn't like that popular. And then by really interestingly, by like 2000, I started working with a TM teacher in 2010. And then from 2011, 12 until 2014, in the beginning of 2015, I went through some really hard back stuff. I really hurt my back from pushing my body in yoga practice. And I kind of remembered like, oh yeah, there's that breathwork method, which is intense. And, but I started to kind of work 100 breaths or 200 breaths on my own of kind of connected method of breathing. And I found that initially it would kind of touch the pain areas in my low back and almost kind of like open up the pain that I was experiencing and somewhat of the wound area, which was a herniated disc.
Mm-hmm.
But then I also found that when I actually kind of like breathed with it, instead of like stop the breathing because it was too much, but instead like settled the breath and stayed connected and just did it, counted 100 or 200, I would find that there was a lot more like inflammation relief my body had experienced.
Mm.
And then, at the same time, like a couple of things happened. In 2014, my back went out on me and I couldn't walk for a couple of weeks. And I had left being a school teacher for a leave of absence for a year. And, and, I just was teaching yoga. I didn't have any health insurance. So my back went out. I couldn't walk. I had to walk with a cane for 2 months. But I found a teacher that I knew of. His name's Tias Little. And I went to Esalen to do a week-long thing with him based on his kind of whole like subtle body and somatic approach. And he brought this meditation teacher with him named Henry, who was a Zen teacher. And as soon as I heard Henry speak, it was like everything Henry was speaking to was pointing directly at what was happening with my body and my heart and my mind. And it sort of was like that. Literally was one of those things of like when the student is ready, the teacher appears. Well, that had, I'd had a lot of teachers at this point, but it had never been more clear to me that the timing of Henry Schuckman coming into my life was like totally incredible and perfect. And I started working with Henry in Zen, and that ended up being a tremendously healing and powerful shift in how I kind of existed in my body and in the world. And then, of course, how I existed with regard to like teaching yoga, postural practice and breath practice. Around the same time, I kind of went back to finding workshops. Like I did a couple more transcendental breathwork, transformational breathwork, Judith Kravitz method, breath experiences. I did a rebirthing experience. Wim Hof got more popular, so I started to like learn the Wim Hof method. Actually did his 10-week online course. Around this same time, Reese got really into breath work. I was friends with Reese, but I was really close with Reese's wife, Daniela. I still am with both of them, obviously. But Daniela said, like, hey, Reese could breathe. Can you breathe him? I said, yeah, does he want to breathe or do you want him to breathe? And she said, he wants to breathe. So we met at a park and literally it was like I think this was 2016. Yeah.
Okay.
It may have even been 2015. It might have been the fall of 2015. But either way, like we met at this park in Cardiff, and all I did was took him through connected rounds of breathing and let him get like big open breathing happening for 30, 40 breaths, and then have him stop and do the retention. And I watched him completely go into like a space that he came out of it, and his eyes just like popped out of his head, and he was like, dude, what is up with this? I need this in my life. And I said that statement to him. I'm like, yeah, it's an epic life upgrade, man. And
it really is.
Yeah, it seriously is, and like it's rad when you get to be so lucky to share it with people and watch them have that kind of pop realization. And I watched that happen with Reese, and just look what's happened with like his trajectory in life, and then getting the honor and the joy of us doing this business thing together. But before that, and my point of saying that about Reese was, and I know I've kind of gone all over the map with like yoga and meditation.
No, this is awesome. I love hearing it.
But Reese went to Poland. All of a sudden, the next thing I knew, like we did maybe 1 or 2 more breathes, and then he was like, called me up, and he's like, dude, I'm going to Poland to train with Wim. And I was like, sick, dude. Oh my God, epic. I can't wait to hear what you say when you come back. And then he came back and he was like super jazzed on the cold too. And he got a freezer and he converted it into an ice bath. And then he said like, hey, what do you think about doing this thing with me? Like we just invite our friends over like in small group on Sunday mornings, and we breathe and we ice bath and we have some tea and we like do a gratitude share. And it was awesome. And it just became this like gradual build of this sort of mini community. And we just saw people kind of getting really like lit up from the breath and feeling really good from the breath and really feeling connected to themselves. And then there's also this community connection that began to grow. And that really was kind of the foundation for like, what about turning this into an offering that we did online that was a subscription model that that we grew, and then that began to grow its own arms over time. Like when we
Mm-hmm.
started it was just, we started in the fall of 2019, and it was just live morning breathes Monday through Friday. We didn't have an intensive together. We didn't ever think about doing a training. We didn't think about doing retreats. And it just has grown. And since then, people got really interested in what we were doing, and said, like, how do I learn more about this? And so we said, like, well, let's put together a month-long intensive. We start another one this weekend, and it's, I think, our 7th or our 8th now, and this is our 3rd year running them. And those kind of get in,
Love it.
you've done it, the biomechanics and the nervous system aspects and different styles of breathing, and this kind of like self-assessment of this exploration of, hey, all these things say that they should have certain effects, but just let your experience dictate that, and
Mm-hmm.
determine what works for you. And also, what I love about bringing, some of the mindful perspective in is like beginner's mind, and staying with an open mind, and kind of being in the flow, and this ongoing self experiment.
Yeah, man. I
Yeah.
love hearing that story, and it's like I said in the beginning, it's so cool to see your guys' your growth over the years, and it's so funny hearing that story of you and Reese getting together that first time in the park for his, first, I guess, formal breath session, and that really wasn't that long ago, right?
Yeah.
5, 6 years ago,
Yeah. Yeah. I think
and it just
6
seems
years
like you
ago.
guys have
Yeah.
accomplished so much in that time, and have grown so much, and have learned so much, and have offered so much to the world around breathwork, and it's just
Mm.
so great to hear that story. So thank you for sharing that. And
Rock
what
on.
you're doing at OBC, man, I just, for our audience that's listening, I was, well, I had Reese back, I had him on the podcast back in, like, I don't know, last summer. And then right around that time, I also did the 4-week intensive with you guys. Went to one of your retreats in the fall of last year in Topanga, and then now in breath school with you guys. And it's just, there's every single one of those either programs or retreats have offered something different, obviously,
Yeah.
but there's a core piece there that, for me, I can't help but see the passion that you guys have, that you just pour into your work around breathwork, and not just educating people, but giving them the experience that you guys have enjoyed, and giving that same experience of what you've gotten out of breathing. And it's
Yeah.
beautiful to watch. So
Yeah.
just want to say thank you
Yeah.
for everything you guys are doing.
Oh, Dan, it's an honor, and it's a joy, and we're stoked. And what's been so cool about it too is that we're all so a little bit different with where our own personal interests lie, and what we've been really
Hmm.
exposed to with, like, more direct and intentional training. Like, I did a rebirthing training in 2016. Rebirthing was Leonard Orr's method. It's been around since the 60s. It's kind of one of the old school methods, as you know. And I got so lucky to do that training with Leonard himself, and he was far out. He was a very fascinating cat. He passed a few years ago. But this woman named Yashoda, and she was, like, mid 70s, and she just had, like, such a depth of experience in the way that she held space and held breath, and she was sort of like grandmother kind of energy and firm, and then Aaron Overstreet, who became a teacher of mine, but also a very close, like, dear brother and friend of mine. And and he held space for me in a way. I mean, I think that's kind of what I want to get at. Is, like, my experience was like, I did this 9-day training, and we breathed every day in the Sierras in small groups of 3. And you'd breathe while 2 people held space, and then you'd hold space while 2 other people breathed, and get to watch them go through their experience. And sometimes people would take 25 minutes to go through whatever it is that the breath and the energy movement of the breath in that connected, continuous way would cycle them through. Sometimes it would be an hour and a half. I had one session with Aaron that was an hour and 45 minutes. I had one session that was 2.5 hours. Just
Wow.
pouring out emotion, just touching
Mm.
incredibly indescribable spaces of dimensions of being that the breath took me to and showed me, and also helped me, like, just kind of some scars and blockages in me, that things that had not been processed. And initially, a lot of it was like, when I first, had in the first couple sessions I had where I started really have these releases, I was able to kind of observe and analyze like, oh, this is like from this life experience, like this is me processing and finalizing this and coming to accept fully that this thing happened this way. And then the more that like things began to move, I kind of recognized like it doesn't matter what life experience it came from. All that matters is the raw data that's being released and moved out and freed in a way through the breath. Yeah, and so like coming from it's rebirthing is such a healing perspective. Yet I'm also so interested in like the activity and the engagement and the investigative kind of potency of like the WIM method, and even the ice stuff. Like I still kind of I'm like, oh really, it's gnarly, but I'll still do it because it's so powerful. But what's been so cool to circle back to the OVC thing is that like that we can all come together and just share these different anecdotes and perspectives and really kind of like remove the labels and get it into like the source of what's happening here is the movement of breath. And then the like being present for what happens in your own experience. And then also as like a space holder, kind of like developing this ability to be really compassionate and kind of open-hearted. It's like, and this is where to me it ultimately inevitably does tie into Buddhism is one way we could put it, or like mindfulness or meditation is another way we can put it. But the term is bodhicitta, which means the awakened heart. And it's like the awakened heart is not just this like internal thing. It's like open and seeing for all beings, and it's been quite powerful and quite beautiful. Yeah.
You touch on a really interesting point around the benefits of practicing breathing. I get this question a lot from people, like, why would I do a breath practice? What do you gain from it? And for me, there's a ton, right? Like improved sleep, better focus, better physical performance. And then you fall into some of the things that you're talking about with, kindness and compassion and love and being more patient and managing stress and anxiety better. Or, if you have depression, it can help with that. Like there's just so much there to unpack.
Yeah.
What would you say practicing breath practice on a consistent basis, incorporating into your lifestyle, what has that done for you?
Oh, great question. I mean, I would say that it's enhanced my ability to drop into being present and kind of feeling that my own deep presence, which is not really boundaried within the confines of this physical body, right? And so for me, it's like the breath practice, a more active breath practice, like circular breathing, rebirthing, Wim Hof, all of these different methods have led me to kind of a more inherent and consistent connection to the basics of breath awareness, of what's happening with my breath, which is right here in this body, right here in this present moment experience, and then open to and with this present moment experience versus like spinning out into some form of like busyness in my mind or hyper analytical or critical or judgmental or wanting things to be different than they are. Yet simultaneously, like aware and equipped with like what power and influence I have over changing certain aspects of how I am and the world is right now around me and my role in various communities and whatever. That breath awareness piece is huge because that's really kind of like what I love to teach people. And I love to incorporate breath work practice or connected breathing practice to get people to kind of stimulate and open the body up enough in a very short way, because it doesn't take a lot to really have somebody have a quick experience of kind of a transition of the energy body, more openness, obviousness, right? Into like, okay, that now I'm actually in my body versus like I'm just totally in my thoughts, right?
Yeah.
Into breath awareness, into letting this kind of like magical flow of breath kind of move in and out as it is on autopilot all the time for us, where we're not even aware of it. Just again, like this coming back into deep presence, really into this, like my shirt says, like this being right here now. Because it's all fleeting, and that's another aspect of things is like we can't, it's like, I guess to summarize your question, breath practice has helped me to embrace and hold what's happening in front of me as it moves and flows and changes without excessive gripping and clenching, with a softer hand.
I love that. Yeah. And what a beautiful mindset and way of life in today's world where things often are very fast paced. We have so much stimulation, mental stimulation. We have all kinds of projects and work to do and text to respond to and phone calls to answer and emails to answer. And it's just like the list goes on and on and on. And I think that's what you appreciate so much around, whether it be breathwork, yoga, meditation. There's a core element in all of those is that ability to be present and to what your shirt says there, to be in the here and now. It's powerful, right? Like that is what we have is the present moment. And we hear that over and over and again, and it may sound cliche to some, but the past is in the past, the future is in the future, but what we truly have right now is the present moment. And breathing and being aware of the breath is just one tool to tap into that mindfulness. So it's beautiful, man. It's a really
busyness, busyness to being is the way I'd like to put it sometimes. Yep. And then even in that being, there's like this swell of presence that allows and is kind of forgiving to the aspects of ourselves that are really task oriented and feel like kind of like the hands from the wheel. Yeah. It's ongoing. Believe me. I mean, I still get stressed, and I still have,
Oh yeah.
Life.
Totally. I'm the same way. Yeah. I'm the same way. I was just talking to somebody yesterday about breathing, and she was asking me the benefits and what it's done for me in my life. And I shared with her that I am naturally a pretty reactive person. I'm the youngest of 5. I grew up in Catholic household, and when you're the youngest of 5 and like just pure chaos at all times, you gotta stick up for yourself. You're almost in like a fighter mentality, right? You're getting picked on by all your older siblings. You got to stand your ground. And so my whole life has been that like a little bit more reactive, a little more defensive. If somebody ticks me off, I'm fighting back. And as you get older and you realize like that's no way to live, is to have that fighter mentality. And sure, there's moments where that I guess could be helpful, but overall, at least when I have learned, I want to be a little bit more patient and a little less reactive and a little more kind and more of a listener. And again, breathing has just helped facilitate all of that. And then the other thing that's so cool is like what you touched on was that you can get to that state within seconds. If you do find yourself, what we're talking about right now is, a situation that gets you really angry, real hot and heated, whatever that may be, you can literally breathe your way through that and slow things down. And all of a sudden you're feeling more relaxed and chilled out. And it's just incredible that we have that natural resource at any time.
So true. Yeah. Yeah. There's 2 things I want to say. I want to relate to with what you just said. I'm the oldest of 4, right?
Okay.
And I have a sister and 2 brothers. And my sister and I would call our younger brothers the little boys, right? And everybody's 2 years apart in our household. And my middle brothers, my middle and youngest brother, they would just want to fight. They would want to play fight with me all the time, right? And so we would play fight and like, full on brawls, like in the basement.
Oh, yeah.
And just like me throwing them across the room and like kicking and punching. And it made my youngest brother, it made him so tough. We called him the woolly bully. Just a quick funny anecdote. Like we all went to the same Catholic school, elementary and middle school. And I must have been in 7th grade. I was 6 years older than Sam, my youngest brother. something happened in his like first or second grade class, and like the teacher wanted him to come to the board and spell a word, and he was just like, no, I won't do it. And she was like, no, you will do it. Get up there. And he's like, no. I said, no, I'm not going to do it. And it turned into this whole like fiasco where my parents got called in, and then the nun at the school was like, well, maybe this isn't the right learning environment for him. My parents were like, maybe you're right. We're taking him out, and they sent him to they put him in a public school that was down the street from us. And so the story is that like the first day that and then of course my parents were like, and we're going to take his other brother, Thaddeus, who they're only a year apart, with him too, like to kind of in your face to the school. And of course the school was like, well, right. Thaddeus is welcome back anytime. And he ended up actually coming back to the Catholic school, St. Agnes Catholic School. And, but the story is my brother got to this new school, he said the first day at recess that like, he was at recess and he didn't really know, and he maybe knew one kid, and that like all of a sudden like the top dog of the boys like came with his like posse and got in his face, and all these boys like stood around him in a circle, and I guess the top dog told him, "You're about to get squished like a dog under a log," or he's got it was something like that, right? And so Sam said that he just immediately went into like what he needed to do, which was fight, and he just punched the kid, punched another kid, kicked another kid, and he said he just went around this circle and whooped all these kids' asses, and that was it. Then he was like, then all of a sudden he was like, like nobody ever fucked with him again, and yeah. Absolutely, because of like our household and like what he got, and he was able to transmute it, just like you've done, Dan. Like you're transmuting that is the energy of action. Like anger can be actually used to our benefit. It can be incredibly powerful when we know how to channel it right.
Totally.
And because you referenced anger, I had an experience in a sesshin. Sesshin is Japanese word. It means touching the heart. It's the school of Zen that I study in, that I've been studying with under my teacher for the last 8 years now. In our center is in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Session is a week-long retreat. We do 4 of them annually. You don't have to do all 4, obviously, but it's like kind of when you're in a Zen training, it's recommended in my case that you try to do 2 full retreats a year. And so I've been doing 2 retreats annually since I began this training. It's been very life transformative. But in 2017, I had this whole experience in summer session of, it was hot, like really hot. And, like it was hot even into the early evening. We were like the third day in or so. And, that you go through a lot of interesting mental and emotional stuff and physical stuff when you're sitting for as long as you are for, 16 meditation periods a day from really 6 a.m. until 9 p.m. And you're not sitting down that whole time. There's breaks between, but anyways, I had noticed this kind of like hot current, like almost like initially I thought like, is this like the heat? Am I being affected by the heat? Because Santa Fe can get really hot in the summer, right? And I thought like, no, this is like something else. This is like emotional. And I just felt my whole body like contort, and I never had this experience with anger. And so then I went back for what's called dakusan. Dakusan means interview. And it's where you get a period with the teacher, and they're like, you talk about what koan you're working on or what you're sitting with in meditation. And then he asks what's coming up for you, whatever. And I told him about this current of anger. And he said, like, listen, if it comes back, go out. And this Zen does like the Zen center is like in the woods in this beautiful arroyo. And there's lots of wooded area. And he goes, go out, go out, live out in the woods and find a stick and just like smash that stick into a tree and see what that feels like. And I did. And the recognition of like not denying and not like pushing down and not trying to push out, like mentally push out by denying or in that sense of aversion from a very strong emotion, but actually finding a way to healthily channel it. I went back in and it was like I had a new body, and there was still some of that fire of that anger. But it was like I had a different relationship to it. And ever since then, I've recognized this with very strong emotions. The pathway is, like you said, the pathway is through, not around. Yeah. Yeah. And so much of that pathway of going through is actually the full like allowance, acceptance, like embodiment of it, not resistance, denial of like, I'm only really doing this so you're gone, versus like, this is this is what's coming up right now.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, and I know we maybe weren't planning on covering cold exposure too much in our conversation, but I feel like it's coming up right now for me. It's the same thing for me with stepping into an ice cold bath or a cold lake or river. Instead of fighting it and resisting it, and you just go through it, man, you just embrace it. And those first 20, 30 seconds, you're like, what am I doing? I'm going to die in here.
It's horrible.
And you let those voices just pass. And next thing you know, you're like, along with breathing through it, you settle in and you surrender. And you're like, oh, yeah, this is powerful. I feel good. I feel alive. And you take that same application and apply it into any other area of your life. It's powerful stuff.
Yeah. It's like breathing to embrace it fully.
Yeah.
And then even embracing the part of the mind that wants to run away from it as far as it can get,
Right.
Yeah. And then it clears. And then you get to that place where you're like, oh, I actually just have allowed the cold into me versus resisting through the exhale. For me, it's like that slow exhale. There's more release and more relief in that place,
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
Powerful,
and it
man.
takes practice. Yeah, it takes practice. Like anything else, you're going to get better at it over time. And with breathing too, like it's been, or meditation for that matter, it's been so cool to see that transformation and that growth for me personally. How when I first started and I didn't really know what I was doing and it was so new. And for anyone listening that is in that same boat or has been there before, you could probably relate. Like those first 2 sessions, yeah, you might have gotten something really great out of it, especially if you had somebody to guide you through it. But in the beginning, it still feels a little like you still got the training wheels on. And then over time, you get better and better, and you just work your way into more advanced breathing or longer meditations. And next thing you know, you feel like it's just a part of who you are. And it's not a chore. It's not a task. It's not something you have to do. It's something that you get to do. And because you get something out of it, you really get true benefits out of it. So,
yeah. I like
cool,
to say
man.
it works its way into the fabric of your existence.
Yeah.
And then it's just a
What
part of you.
can you tell me what do you mean by that? Can you share more about what that means to you?
Yeah, I mean, I for a long time, with the first 5 years that I was meditating, it was transcendental meditation, TM, and I was given a mantra from a really wonderful and incredible human being, Michael DeFrancisco, was my first meditation teacher. But I had to wade through periods of extreme boredom and physical discomfort and like incredible monkey mind and kind of like forcing myself to meditate. And then, but when I didn't, I would kind of know like I really wanted to do that. And a lot of that. And so, but it took time for my body to kind of get used to what I call the mold, like almost like a casting for like, okay, my body knows this posture. My body now actually knows how to hold this posture. Initially it wouldn't, because it might, you'd slump or you get pain in your shoulder, your neck, or your foot would fall asleep, or a range of different physical discomforts that can come up. The mind spins off into all different forms of fantasy, of stuff about the past that you wish you could do differently, worries about the future, things like, task oriented, like kind of present. Well, I got to do it. I don't really have time for this. Resistance. But in time, I just kind of used, I guess the more that I developed kind of a little bit of a stamina to be in those mental states of discomfort, physical states of discomfort, obviously emotional states that aren't comfortable too. It just started to be something that like I began to see would more quickly clear, and I could be just kind of a little bit more still, or at least I'd get more glimpses of like, okay, mind actually finally synced into body. And then it just became something that was like, this is not, and I'm not perfect. That doesn't mean I'm I'm not like a monk or something like that. It's not like I'm not like exactly 6 a.m. every morning. I mean, I do like to wake up and sit, right? But I've found that I have these bookends with sitting practice at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day as a minimum. It's just something that my system feels regulated by and normal with. Yeah. And it feels like, just like you'd get up and brush your teeth in the morning, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of become something like that. Like if you don't, it's not the end of the world, but you just kind of feel like something's not. I mean, the toothbrush is a great analogy. It's like almost like for me, if I was to wake up and not brush my teeth, I'd go and have my cup of coffee. I'd maybe have a little bit of breakfast at some point, but I would kind of feel like my mouth doesn't feel like regulated, right?
Yes, totally.
And the same thing when I go to bed. Like that's just it's part of the fabric of my existence. It's a habit, right?
Yeah.
And the same thing has happened with meditation and with, for me, like, kind of random periods of connected breathing. I find that I do connected breathing a lot. And even more importantly than that, I find that I come into breath awareness all the time throughout my day. And this is one of the things I love to share with people and encourage is like, do your breath practice and notice how that by doing an intentional conscious breath practice where you're changing your breath pattern and opening it up, even if it's for 3 breaths that are bigger, that can lead you to a greater sense of connectedness, of bringing your mind back to your breath in your body. And where is that happening? It's only happening right one place, one time, right now, over and over again. That brings us in now. And it kind of lets people like sort of wake up a little bit out of the world of distraction and the illusions of distractions that we find ourselves stuck in at that time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a good analogy is with the brushing of your teeth. And I absolutely notice when I don't have a meditation or breath session, because it's a big part of my lifestyle now. Like that's every day. It's breathing and some form of meditation. And if I skip it in the morning, midday, early afternoon, I can totally tell there's something off. And when I am consistent with it, I absolutely feel more focused, happier, and in better mood, more productive, more aligned with who I am and who I want to become and my goals. It's so crazy to think, but also not crazy that a practice like breathing and meditation can change the whole trajectory of your day. But once you get into it, like that's just like you said, it's like the fabric of who you are. That's part of you. And if you miss that on a day, your body and your mind are going to tell you.
Yeah, totally. And to personalize it a little bit, I referenced earlier that I was a high school special ed teacher. I taught 9th grade and 12th grade students in a big public school district here in San Diego for almost 20 years, 20 school years. I taught kids with ADHD and learning disabilities. I taught English, but really, what I liked to work with people was listening and speaking skills, and I ended up going down that career pathway because I had my own focus and concentration issues as a kid. I had bad ADHD. I was just really excited about the world and kind of bored by school. That's a better way to put it. That's more of the reality, right? And and kind of placed in these systems that were very traditional, Catholic school. Like you do education this way. You have to learn, math, science, English, and then you go to college and you get a job, and it's like just like that kind of pathway. And there wasn't a lot of open encouragement for like exploring art as potential careers, photography or art or like painting and I was actually kind of really into those things, music as a kid, but never just didn't really line up that way for me. But anyways, when for me, what made a lot of sense was like this development into breath practice and into meditation for both this ability to focus and settle the body and to be very, very alert and very calm at the same time, right? Which was sort of a rewiring of my system because as a component of being a kid and diagnosed with ADHD, I was put on Ritalin when I was 8, and that was problematic for my ability to sleep and for my nervous system and the way that my mind worked, and honestly the way that my body grew. I was kind of a little bit. I didn't grow at the same pace as other kids. It wasn't like super stunted, but I didn't really come into my body until like maybe age 20. And then falling asleep at night was always a major problem for me from age 8 up until probably my mid to late 20s. And then I started to know and understand that certain pranayama approaches can have this like soothing and pacifying and settling effect on the body and the mind and the nervous system.
Mm.
And, I started to see that in my early 30s, like I'd wake up in the middle of the night sometimes, like thinking about things, thinking about my work day, my school job, relationship stuff, life stuff, whatever. Right. And even still now, like when I wake up in the middle of the night and there's like kind of like a thing that my mind's wanting to work out, the breath practice is like that slow exhale, doubling the exhales. I can fall asleep in 3 to 5 breaths. I can find that I can like drift into that space, and
That's
it's the
powerful.
kind of the same thing too. Yeah. With meditation, I can sit down and recognize what's happening in my system and with my mind and do a little bit of breath, a little bit of conscious breath. And then like I like to share with people, like give the breath back over to the breath and watch it and let it kind of move on its own, but in the body and the belly, the ground.
Yeah.
And it just kind of like is this wonderful anchor into presence.
Can you walk us through what those breaths look like? You said it's a double on the exhale.
Yeah.
And specifically for relaxing and helping with falling asleep. Because I was just talking to one of my friends. She and another friend are both having trouble with sleep and specifically just like falling asleep, right? They're just like tossing and turning and staying up later than they should.
Sure.
So when it's a double exhale, can you tell us like what that looks like?
Yeah.
I'd love to go back to them and like share with them.
Totally. So this is what I tell people is you have to almost kind of replicate and play act the way that you may feel, and we've all felt like this at the end of a really long day, where you get home and all you want to do is crawl into bed, and finally you do, and when you get into that bed, you literally can let your body go. You're like, oh, and all your muscles can release, and you can release into the support of your comfortable mattress, right? So that's the first step. That's the first thing that I tell people to do is like, first of all, feel your body and consciously let go of muscles. Even if there isn't like obvious tension in the muscles, let go. Like as if you've finally been received by the mattress, right? And then out of that, observe what is your natural breath cadence. And so for some people, sometimes when there's anxiety, there's like a short and fast breath cadence. And some people just might find that they're not even breathing very obviously at all. But either way, it's like find a comfortable inhale, which for most people is going to be 2, maybe 3 seconds, right? And just kind of get into that comfortable inhale as you relax the muscles or feel into the muscles. And then as you breathe out, doubling that amount of time. So if it's a 2-second inhale that you can observe, then you count like 4, 3, 2, 1, relaxing the muscles into the support of the mattress. And you do this over and over again. What people will find is that the inhale, as you relax into it and allow it to be what it is without kind of like, and it's not kind of like a controlled or constricted thing. It's just a normal, easy, natural breath. Nose, mouth, whatever's happening, right? But slowing the exhale down and like taking our presence or our consciousness like a wave into us and down into the mattress underneath us, right? And just kind of staying with that. And it's sort of in a way like counting sheep, but it's more of this deliberate, like I'm bringing my breath into my body and I'm intentionally relaxing my body, and it's all good. And here I am in the body at home. 5 breaths. Giving people that 5 breaths, 2 in, 4 out, 3 in, 6 out. If it opens up. And then what people also might find is after 5 or 6 breaths is they need a bigger breath. And then that even makes it easier to go back into that cadence. In, slow down the out. And people, and like, it's like telling people, feel your presence sink deeper inside of you. Where it's dark and quiet. Kind of mysterious.
Love it, man. Yeah. I absolutely love that. I feel just relaxed right now. Like I could take a little nap. I'm going to give that a try tonight. I usually fall asleep pretty quickly, but every once in a while I toss and turn. And
yeah, and this is also a powerful technique for people that are, it's circumstantial stuff. Somebody's got a job interview or something really intense coming up. Or if somebody gets into a like something on the road, which is intense, which brings up a lot of intensity. Slow the
Yeah.
exhales down, right?
Yeah.
If you're being accosted or addressed aggressively by your boss or your partner, you're in an argument with somebody. See what happens if instead of like reacting, you respond internally by just feeling the energy that you have and slowing down the exhales,
Hmm.
relaxing and releasing internally. It's quite
Hmm.
powerful. I found changes
Yeah.
things.
Super. This is so fascinating, and what I'm enjoying so much about being in breath school with OBC, but just in general of being on this journey of learning about the breath. I think the coolest part is how we can activate, the different sides of the nervous system, right? Our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, and by regulating one or the other, you can either down regulate or up regulate. Whether you're looking for more energy and more, a little bit more zest for your day or that situation, or if you're looking to calm down and relax and maybe help fall asleep or just calm your nerves from, like you said, going into an interview, a difficult conversation, something that would normally make you reactive. There's just so many ways that you can use your breath to improve your life.
Totally. Yeah, this is the really getting to know yourself and using breath as a tool to really
Mm-hmm.
kind of touch in with and determine where do I want to be? What do I need for this kind of present time in this thing I have, this environment that I'm in right now. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's good.
100%. We have weaved meditation in and out of this conversation, but I want to touch a little bit more on that. I understand you have your side project aside from everything you guys are doing at Our Breath Collective. You have started up Inner Echo. So can you tell us a little bit more about Inner Echo and then anything else around meditation that you want to share with the world?
Sure. Yeah. I think the most important thing that I say first is that I am a student. I'm a lifelong devoted and committed student of meditation. Right. So that's the place I come
Mm.
from. I'm not authorized. I'm not a Zen teacher. I've done trainings in mindfulness, several different trainings with wonderful teachers, but my commitment in my own practice is Zen, and I am not a Zen teacher. I think that's the most important thing. I am a Zen student, and I want to remain humble. But I do
Mm.
love sharing anecdotes of how to tap into deeper presence and some of the kind of like spacious stillness that is readily available here for us with people. And we can do that through so many ways. And what I saw with our breath collective was a lot of people, in addition to saying like, I'm really interested in knowing more and learning more about breath and breath work and the mechanics and the nervous system stuff. And that's what kind of caused us to go into the direction of the intensive and then gradually the training. I also saw that a lot of people said, after I breathe, I feel like I come into this space of quiet where I think I may be able to actually investigate meditation from this. And I said, yeah, that's awesome.
Mm.
Great. So what I did a year ago was I created this 12-week course. I ran it as a 12-week course a year ago called Joyful Being. And I kind of put together weekly themes that had to do with like, yes, meditation as a practice, but with particular intentional themes like compassion, awareness, some of the sense gates. There's 12 different modules, and I offered that as a course that met twice a week that included meditation. It gave people a journal. It gave people like weekly content to like apply to their lives and their relationships and their interior experience of mind and heart stuff, right? And that had such a good response and felt so good doing that this was like, the spring of last year. And I was really getting to the place with my teaching career that I knew I wanted to step away. I've wanted to for a long time, to kind of be more invested fully into our breath collective and doing this kind of work and really working with adults who are interested in receiving like instruction and guidance, in how to just settle into presence of being.
Mm.
So born out of Joyful Being, I put together this whole like brand called Inner Echo. I did a second course in the fall of last year was called Inner Echo. That was just essentially like presence resonance or relational meditation specific. That's what I did this wonderful training with this guy named Riaz Mohan. He's in the Bay Area. He leads trainings and he's one of my strongest influences, incredible human being. I just found that a lot came from my own experiences with breath and with my own meditation background, without getting into Zen specifics, but of sitting in stillness and then learning certain tools inside my house. Utilizing certain tools in like small segments to bring people into deep presence, this open, spacious presence that was where I removed jargon, where I removed any language of Buddhism, or even like talking about like the awakened heart, that kind of stuff. And so I also kind of launched it into a thing of like doing privates with people, with adults and with high school age kids. And now I've started to build like a client list of both adults and I have a range of different families I work with, and it's kind of awesome to get kids into breathwork and then kids into like sensational presence, and learn how to work with their bodies and their minds and their hearts in a way that like schools don't really address or know how to address. And this is what Interecho offers. And I have Joyful Being I'm going to do again. It looks like in either late March or early April. I'm going to condense it down to an 8-week course. And I'm ongoing working with private clients, and I do like kind of short sessions. They're typically 30 to 40 minutes. I've created a website. I have all my offerings that are laid out on the website. I incorporate a little bit of breath work in with meditation practice, but really, like we spoke about before, just as an opportunity to kind of like open up the body and the presence in the body, and then drop underneath the neck. That's the way I like to put it.
Yeah. You mentioned how people that get into breathing, they might have moments where they're like, oh, I feel like I could meditate now. I've always looked at that ever since I started practicing breathwork. It's almost, depending on the technique, but it's almost a meditative practice for me, right? Actually get into meditative states and super mindful and aware of specifically my breath. But it's so cool to have the two different practices, but they both come together. And just like yourself, I was introduced to meditation long before breathing, or obviously I've been breathing my whole life, but sorry, we can pause. It's a little loud. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, maybe. Yeah, that's better. Okay, cool. So yeah, when you have those two practices, it's super fascinating that you can have the two different practices that you've known for a good large. Sorry, now I have noises that I'm getting distracted. I'm gonna start over there. What were we touching on? I'm trying to think where I was going with that. Yeah, I'll just pick back up. So yeah, you mentioned that a lot of people that you work with, when they do breath work, they can enter into a meditative state, and then they realize, oh, maybe I can actually practice breath work now. And that's been a big thing for me, is like, it is a meditative practice, right? It's being aware of your breath and being present, and the two go hand in hand. So I definitely get a lot out of meditation, and much like yourself, meditation was introduced to me before breathwork, and TM specifically has been a big part of my meditation practice. I've done some shortcuts around it. I haven't gone to formal training like I know we're supposed to, but I still totally get the value of it and that core element of being in the present. And I can't speak highly enough of it.
What I love about doing privates with people in this way is just offering people that couple time a week touch-in of guided instruction, and then saying like, and now between these next 3 days before we see each other again, try for 7, 12, 15, 18, 20, gradually building in. And, inevitably people with the guided instructions say like, yeah, the guided instructions is easier, but people find that over time, the more that they're sitting, as they get in a little bit longer periods, that mind gets quieter and quieter. And then there's that like being in presence, and that opening up. It's
What would you say with meditation? What would you say what are the key takeaways there for someone that is interested in getting into meditation? And I guess I'll just share for me personally, it helps me much like breathwork does, but meditation, I really want to touch on that mindfulness piece and that present awareness. And really it allows me to be almost like the quarterback of my day, right? Where I can call the shots, right? Like you think about the quarterback on a football field, they know where everyone's supposed to be. They know where the receivers what routes they're supposed to run. And they're the quarterback, they're the leader on the football field. And I feel like that when I meditate on a specific day, like I'm the leader of my day, of my life. I have complete control and power over what I create, how I speak, how I think, how I live my life. And that is my own personal testimony of meditation. But what would you say for someone that is just getting into it, that's interested and they want to learn more about it?
Yeah. I think that a couple of the things I really would find value in saying is that, like, we look at breath as a tool. We talked about yoga, and that's like a physical postural practice that's kind of a tool for health and wellness. People might consider like, isn't meditation the thing that's like the key to the lock of like enlightenment or whatever? And I just like I like to throw those words out. I totally forget about those words because it's more than, to me, meditation is the place where we can come to find that the door is only has ever been locked from the inside. And this is the place where we can actually learn how to unlock that door into openness. And what happens in that openness is we become much more, in a relationship to self-love. In a place of like this heart of being. And that's not, once we're in that place of self-love, things just begin to flow. And it's like so much easier to deal with all the challenges and difficulties in life and be present and accepting and real with sadness and suffering and loss and impermanence. Because we're all going through it, and I think these last couple of years with COVID, we've all really had the Band-Aid ripped off of like, oh, whoa, life is hard.
Yeah.
Life is not what I thought it was going to be. And life is restricted and constricted. But there is a place to come home to again and again. And it's here. And it's getting to know that place in a real way. And that's like, this is all words. And so in that sense, that's all concept. And I think that the direct experience that meditation can provide for people of getting really still and really open and really quiet, that's where the door becomes unlocked from the inside.
Yeah, you touch on a super interesting point around our emotions. And we, like you said, for the last couple of years, we've all have felt and dealt with a plethora of emotions. And of course, for most of us throughout our lives, we have, but especially in the last couple of years. And those emotions are not going to go away, whether that's fear, anger, love, happiness, sadness. They're not going to go away. It's not like you can just wish it away or meditate your way like away from feeling angry. We're all human still. But it's about living with those emotions and embracing them and working through them, processing them. And breathwork and meditation are just two great ways to be able to facilitate that. So awesome.
Yeah. That's what I like to say. Explore. That's what I love to tell people. Explore this. Explore it for yourself.
Yeah.
Don't take my word for it. Take your own inner experience as the real evidence of whether or not this is going to work for you or not. And to each their own, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that message because it's very easy for us to sit here and talk, and people that are listening that are maybe new to it, they might not fully understand it. But when you go out and try it on your own, if you do get something from it, then awesome. Like lean into that and explore. And if it isn't really jiving with you, then cool. Like let that be. But yeah, I'm all about experiences for sure. Sweet. So Luke, my before I get to my last question, where would you like to point people to learn more about yourself, about Our Breath Collective and Inner Echo?
Yeah. If you have interest in diving into presence resonance and what a meditative approach to joy can do for you, then check out my website, innerecho.com. Again, I offer privates and kind of like package things for people to really help them to develop their own practice. And then, of course, Our Breath Collective is alive and thriving. Ourbreathcollective.com. We have a variety of different programs. We have our flagship, which is our weekday, Monday through Friday, live morning breathes, which are cataloged. We have a whole library of different approaches with short breathwork practices that we call minimum effective dose. And then we offer intensives. We offer a year-long training, a 6-month and then a continuation training, which you're in right now, Dan, which is awesome to have you in. And then we offer in-person retreats. And we have many, many different programs coming up this year, including a Costa Rica retreat in July, which is my favorite place in the world, in the Osa Peninsula of Costa Rica. And yeah, it's a really epic community vibe, and it's growing and exciting, and it's a really nice place for people to kind of experience breathwork outside of the kind of like stickiness of one particular method. We have this multidisciplinary approach, and we really encourage, try this on and see how it feels for you. You decide.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, I can't speak highly enough of OBC and what you guys are offering. And what's so great is for anyone that's either already in the world of breath practice, or if you're just new and you're just starting to explore, there are offerings for almost anyone that's interested, regardless of your expertise and your experience level. You know, you could simply come into the Daily Breathes through a membership. And like you said, they're, shorter 10, 15 minute breath sessions, but you guys explore all sorts of different techniques and modalities. It's not like you're focused just on one type of breathing. So just to have that experience and be exposed to all the different breathing techniques is awesome for someone like myself, who is fairly new to breathwork. But then you also have, more extensive and intensive programs like the 4-week intensive and the breath school that we've been talking about that I'm in right now. So yeah, for those listening, absolutely go check out Luke and his work with Inner Echo, and then of course Our Breath Collective. Can't say enough. I mean, even wearing your guys' t-shirt today.
Love it, man. Yeah.
So Luke, just to tie everything into the amazing conversation that we've had, I want to hear your thoughts on what living from the heart means to you. And that phrase, I got that phrase from you when we were communicating on, setting up this recording. And you mentioned that phrase, let's chat a little bit about what living from the heart means. So I'd love for you to take the floor on what living from the heart means. And then if there's anything else that you want to tie in that we haven't covered yet today.
Wow, that's a great question to ask. Living from the heart for me means living in a way where we are embracing all of the parts of our lives, including the really difficult ones. And in doing so, kind of like stepping into our personal existence and our collective existence in a way where we bring more light into the world. Not to sound cliche, right? But it's almost like that term, like they say the darkest hour is right before the dawn, and that blend of both sides of our existence, living from the heart, like really taking this opportunity of this lifetime that we're living and making the most of it by being with it as it's showing up, and then kind of empowering ourselves to determine, how do I want to step into effectively, bringing positive change and goodness and joy into the world. And I just really think that there's an aspect of getting still and letting go, and letting the breath move that can be so enhanced by working with the breath and being alive and active with the breath, and this kind of this ebb and flow, doing and allowing, on both sides of the coin. Yeah, it's precious.
So beautifully said.
It's a miracle. This whole thing is a miracle. This breath that people who listen to this right now, the breath that you are taking in this body that you are existing in, is in and of itself a tremendous miracle. I mean, think about like we have all these problems in this world, right? The climate catastrophe and our social climate and you name it, right? This is the blink of an eye in the context of this Big Bang that we happen to be existing in this short period of time. And it's all fleeting, and it's a beautiful Zen poem that I love to share with people that kind of touches into this, and it says this: like the moon reflected in a drop of dew, shaken from a crane's bill in flight, see all things as this. It's gone in a flash. And we have this opportunity to wake up in it and totally love it. And almost like see it from the eye of the heart. I mean, that's what my personal experience has shown. In fact, in recent months, I've had this heart opening in this very unique and tangible way in the physical space of my heart. And it hasn't been without some hardness, some sadness, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. And part of that too is knowing how to show up in the world and really hold what we see in the world with tenderness. And I think that that's so much of what we do when we go inside and we allow things to be as they are. And this space opens up where we can hold even these parts of ourselves that we say, like, I don't want this to be here. This isn't serving me. This isn't helping me or the world. There still is a forgiveness around that and a seeing and an allowing of, like, that still is a part of me. Yeah.
Love it. So powerful, Luke. I mean, there's so much to reflect on there and so much beauty in what you had just said. Importance of life and how short it can be in terms of the bigger picture, like you said, this Big Bang and the many hundreds of thousands of millions of years that this planet and universe has existed before us, and the many, many more billions of years that's going to exist after we leave. And we're here for just a short blink. And what you and I are working on, and everyone else the folks at OBC and so many others that are in the same realm, that we're trying to milk the shit out of our lives.
Yeah.
And get as much as we can from it and give back as much as we can and do it with love and do it with grace and do it with compassion and awareness and presence. And that's what you and the folks at OBC are embodying. So I just, again, want to say thank you for all that you're doing.
An honor. Yeah.
And thank you for your time today.
If I could leave everybody with one thing, I would say this, since we were just talking about heart stuff. The deliberate practice of becoming present to and feeling into the beat of our own hearts holds a tremendous wealth of experience for us. And so developing this relationship with this drumbeat of the universe that holds all of the stuff of the Big Bang in it, right here in our own chest, right? That's been doing it just for you and just for you and everybody hearing this, and me and everybody that we know, since the moment we were born until the moment we take our last breath, right? And what I find happens is when we come into this space of connection to and relationship with this movement, it's a live movement in our heart, we become a little bit more aware of, oh, there's breath here too. And there's a rest that can happen there. And in that resting, this opening is available. And there's deep peace there.
What a beautiful way to end the conversation. We'll leave it at that. And just want to say, Luke, thank you for all you're doing. Keep up all your good work.
My pleasure, Dan. It's been an honor to be on with you today. And thanks for talking to me about all this cool stuff.
Likewise, brother. All right, man. You have a great day.
Okay, bro. You too. Take care.